Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
Live on location from Moonshine's patio and bar. I'm here. See you on the other side. Me, Wendy, during South by Southwest, and we are joined by an Austin haunted history expert, a tour guide and paranormal researcher, Monica Ballard. Monica, how you doing today?
I'm doing terrific. I'm so thrilled to finally connect with you guys and do something here during South by Interactive.
Thank you. We're thrilled to be connected with you too, and to finally talk to another of the Austin experts. See, we've been to Austin so many times, and we love haunted stuff, of course. So this is our chance to really find out the down and dirty.
Yes, the
secrets.
We've seen a lot of the nasty parts of Austin, but not enough of the nasty paranormal parts of Austin.
There we go. The haunted underbelly,
yes,
as it were.
That's the dark undercurrent in Austin. Okay, so let's get just a little bit about you so people can know how you became so weird yourself.
Okay. I came to Austin 20 years ago, 2001, and joined Austin Ghost Tours really part-time in 2006. They needed extra help around Halloween. And it was funny, the week before I started giving tours, the guy who trained me shared with me a photo of him talking on a patio or a porch of a building, and in the window of that building, which was closed at night, was a full-bodied apparition listening in on the stories.
Awesome.
And at that point I thought, oh, it's an interactive tour. Oh, okay. And from then on, I realized how important telling the truth about these former citizens of our city was.
Now, have you always been into ghost stories, or is that something like, did you grow up in a haunted house, or did you have an imaginary friend who turned out to be not so imaginary?
Because not just everybody responds to an ad looking for a haunted tour guide. You know, it's not the average.
Well, let me put it this way: my husband and I never said "till death do us part." So when he passed in 2003, there was immediate activity. As he fumbled, and I say that with love, sweetie, I do. He fumbled his way from this dimension into progressive dimensions after that. He had a tendency to break things, usually electrical, but then he would fix them the next day. To this day, even yesterday, my TV goes on by itself. And that's usually him checking in and saying, hi.
Sure.
Yeah.
Does it any particular show that when it's on that he likes to turn it on himself? Is he he's like, oh, God, I'm gonna see that NASCAR. I'm dead, but I love NASCAR.
It's funny. I will usually comment on the show like Charlie's Angels, really, But yeah.
So you are someone who has had paranormal experiences in your own life even before you joined the Austin Ghost Tours team.
Yes. So I could speak from personal experience. Like, hey, you know that thing they usually have on TV with a ghost getting up in your face and yelling, "Get out!" That's not how it is.
Right.
That's not what happens. 9 times out of 10, when the paranormal happens to you, wouldn't you agree? It is not something frightening.
Right.
It tends to be interesting, where you go, oh, and then it's only when your logical mind tries to figure it out, you go, ooh.
It's almost mundane, I find. Sometimes you just be like, huh, that was weird. Wait.
That was weird.
Right? Like I just touched something, from the other side, and I just like, how did that happen? And it felt normal.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's only in hindsight that your mind gets blown a little bit.
Exactly.
And so, all right. So you said that you think that the Austin Ghost Tours that you guys run have the most interactivity or paranormal activity associated with them because you're not afraid to tell the brutal truth. So what's the philosophy behind your ghost tour?
A lot of research, a lot of hours in the Austin History Center, pouring through city directories. Okay, that's the building today. What was it 10 years before that? And 10 years before that? And what was the land before that? Going back and back and back as far as you can. Did the address change? Did who not only who died there, but who was passionate about the building? There are so many locations like that, and there are times when we get it wrong, the spirits themselves will find a way to put the truth in our hands in the most interesting ways possible. There was one story about one of the brides at the Driscoll that we had been telling wrong for 10 years.
Okay, and so you're talking about the Driscoll Hotel.
Yes.
And so what was the story? You want to can sum it up real quick. What was the story that you guys were getting wrong?
We were telling the story that Suicide Bride number 2, and when I say 2, that would imply
There was
more than one. Yes. So Suicide Bride number 2 was a socialite in Houston who had her big day called off, and she drove to Austin in her fiance's little red sports car and prepaid for a 4-night stay at the fanciest digs in town. Went out on a shopping spree the next day, a $20,000 shopping spree on his credit cards, returned with everything, only got out one new item, her brand new shiny revolver, put the do not disturb sign on the door, took a feather pillow from the bed, faced herself in the bathroom mirror, and shot herself in the stomach. She bled out in the bathtub.
So it was in the stomach, too.
In the stomach.
So not even like a quick way to go.
No, it's a vanity thing.
Oh, because...
Women tend to do the stomach because, yeah.
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I can see that. Right,
Yeah.
of course, because you still want to look good in the...
in the afterlife.
coffin. Yeah.
So after that, her full-bodied apparition had been seen wandering the hotel. A lot of times it was shopping bags, stopping in front of her old room, which, by the way, at the time was 427. And there were so many stories going around about 427 that the hotel thought, oh, you know what, we'll just change the room number to 429. It doesn't work that way. So that was the story we were telling for about 10 years, and you find it all over online and in books and stuff. And then, one Halloween season, it was my job to stand in the lobby of the Driscoll and tell stories over and over. People led groups to me, and I told stories, and then the group went on to encounter other storytellers.
Sure.
The night before Halloween, I finished my shift, got a drink from the bar, sat in the lobby, finished the drink, and sat there, just kind of zoned out. And at some point, something said, now, leave now. And so I got up and I literally ran into a woman who saw my name badge, and she said, oh, I keep meaning to take a ghost tour whenever I'm in town. How often are you in town? Well, I come for all the UT home games. And I always stay here at the Driscoll. The staff knows me, the ghosts know me, Tara, Samantha.
Wait.
Yeah, I gotta...
The record scratch.
Okay, so
Yeah.
first of all, when you heard the leave now, did it sound like a voice that you actually heard, or was it like a feeling?
No, it was like a feeling.
Okay.
It was like a feeling that
Got
said,
it.
you know, and I just chalked it up to, yeah, you know, tomorrow's Halloween. I better get some rest. It's going to be a big day. And then, boom, ran into this woman.
So it actually, to go back a second, it actually was a ghost telling you to get out. So it does happen.
All right, okay. But nicely.
Right.
Hospitably. So she mentioned Samantha. And I said, whoa, who's Samantha? And because only 4 people in my circle of friends knew that I had captured a whispered voice like the previous March in the women's bathroom in the middle of a Saturday afternoon. Felt somebody was in there with me, and I got my recorder out. I said, who's here with me? Samantha.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I said, who's Samantha? And she said, well, that's what the staff calls the senator's daughter because they had to name her something. I said, okay, who's Tara? She said, that's the Suicide Bride. I said, oh, the one from the 1950s on the 5th floor or the one from 1989? And I was just so proud of myself. You know, I can just have these facts and figures. And she said, oh, no, actually it was 1991. I said, how do you know that? And she said, oh, I have a copy of the police report. Hey, would you guys at Austin Ghost Tours like a copy of that police report?
That's nuts.
I know.
Eureka!
And I said, who are you? Because in about 30 minutes, you and I are going to be best buds. And her best friend in Austin worked for the Austin Police Department in the forensics department.
Wow, what a great resource.
And she said, hey, you always stay at the Driscoll. You want me to find out about some of the nefarious things that go on there? And she found the police report for the suicide. And her real story, this woman's real story, was much more tragic than this urban legend that we've been telling. She found the most interesting way to hand us the truth.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's an awesome story.
Yeah.
And so it's funny though that woman tells you, like, I've always been meaning to take one of,
Yeah.
So did you at least give her a free tour?
Oh,
You're like,
she has
all
been-
right, fine, we'll get you 10% off.
She has been a huge resource, and in fact, her friend from the police department became one of our backup tour guides. So
That's perfect.
So it was tremendous.
That's pretty awesome. And that's the Driscoll Hotel, and we'll have some pictures and links in the show notes there. You'll be able to find that at othersidepodcast.com/239. Now, Monica, we're here inside the Moonshine.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about this building. Because you guys start the Austin Ghost Tour here, right?
On Saturday nights, yes, this is our point of origin for Austin Ghost Tours. And it's the building is one of the older buildings in the city of Austin, dates back to 1854. The land was purchased by Henry Hofheinz. And really, the little
Henry Hofheinz. I love that.
Henry Hofheinz.
What a great name.
And the little yellow house that you see right here, that was actually the first building on the property. And it was where...
Nice paint job. It looks new.
I was going to say, it doesn't look that old.
Well, they've kept it up. And it was where they kept the feed for the mules, because mules were his livelihood. He ran an import-export business going to and from Mexico. And back then, when animals were your transportation, they got the best accommodations, right? Now, when he got married, like a year or 2 years later, Mrs. Hofheinz was not too keen on the whole, hey, honey, we're going to live in a tent out in front of the mule stable idea. She also didn't like his line of work and insisted that he go into the saloon keeping business. That's when they built the main structure there. And so the first part where the bar is today, that was Henry's saloon. And then the back part where the restaurant is was Mrs. Hofheinz Mercantile, the grocery store. And then the family lived upstairs, but they owned the whole block.
One-stop shopping, too.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that's the first time in history that the wife encourages the husband to go into the bar business. Like, it would be a great idea, open on a bar.
Here's what's interesting. She was a teetotaler, but she knew where the money was.
Business.
So yeah. She was pretty smart. But they were a German Texan family, and so having a beer garden was very important to the socializing of the community.
What era are we talking about here? Like what decade or what time?
1850s was when the property was established, and they owned the whole block and added buildings on around the block. Henry died in 1880. Christina, his wife, died in about 1869 or so. She died in the house, his wife. And then their children moved into the little yellow house next door, which is often called the wedding house, because they built it on the occasion of her marriage to keep them on the property.
Sure.
So that they could work in the business and all that. They both lived and worked and died there. Their son, who married, also lived on the property, lived and worked and died there. The Sunday house right here is called a Sunday house. And if you go into the German areas of Central Texas, New Braunfels and Fredericksburg and places like that, you find a lot of Sunday houses. Sunday houses were common because people would come from the outlying areas to come to the big city on Saturdays to do their trading. And then they would stay overnight in the Sunday house so that they could attend church the following day before heading back to their farms and ranches. This is the last remaining Sunday house in the city of Austin.
Oh, okay, very cool.
And the plot of land here, the family plot of land, is one of 3 remaining German Texan compounds left in the city of Austin.
Nice. Okay, so this is a place with a lot of history.
Absolutely.
And so it's been a bar or a saloon kind of deal
Or a restaurant.
for 160 years.
Oh yeah, easily.
Wow.
And
That explains why they make such delicious drinks here.
yeah, I was gonna
Stay away from the actual drink called moonshine.
Oh,
If you have one, they will cut you off at 2.5. It's kind of like, nope, you've had enough.
All right,
No
fair
more
enough.
Because it'll sneak up on you. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I understand. Last time, actually, I think there was a party where somebody had moonshine. Like, you want to try something? I had a bunch, and then my eyes were going different directions and stuff. Like, it was a rough one.
So some of the activity here seems to be very childlike. Whatever is here seems to have reactions of not being paid attention to enough. or wanting attention, or hello, hey, you're not paying attention to me. For instance, there was one time when Dennis Foley, our audio engineer for investigations, he and I were out here in this spot talking about another location, and suddenly we heard a gigantic crash from this direction, and we were like, there's nothing in that direction that can go crash. And then we started talking about the ghosts at this property, and things seemed to settle down after that. It was kind of like, no, you're only allowed to talk about spirits here.
Wow. Okay.
I want to be the one you're talking about.
Okay, so you guys, in addition to running the tours, you also have an investigative component.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And we've investigated at various places around the state of Texas. We had a TV show called Haunted Texas.
Oh, cool.
Where we would talk about the history. It would be a heavy emphasis once again on history.
Right, you wouldn't just go walk into a place and be like, come at me, ghost.
Yeah, exactly. Or try to trap them, or through various and sundry means. Just really.
It's amazing.
No, TV is a wonderland full of BS.
Hollywood, yes. That we've gone to places like Goliad and the Alamo and it freed slaves colonies and things like that.
Magnolia Hotel, you said?
I did the Magnolia on my own pretty much, but collected the evidence there and found it very, very interesting. And yeah, I love steeping into history, and any place that we go, we're very interested in looking up the history of the property.
Well, I have a question since we're here.
Sure.
What is the most compelling evidence that you yourself found here at this location at the Moonshine Cafe or Patio Cafe?
I had an interesting personal experience here. I arrived one summer evening for the tours and arrived there on the corner. I was setting all my stuff up, and they had the Muzak set on classic rock. And the song was Born to Be Wild. And there were like 3 ladies on the patio. And there were no pedestrians around me whatsoever. And right in this ear, I heard a gravelly voice sing along with, I never want to die. And I thought it was someone showing up for the tour.
Yeah.
And so I grabbed my list and I said, hey, here for the ghost tour? And looked around, and I immediately went into investigator mode. It's kind of like, okay, hang on.
Get the meters out.
3 women there, no pedestrians around me, and it really wasn't until it came back around in the song again that I realized what it was that they were singing to me. I never want to die. Okay.
About that.
Apparently not. So the staff often tells us quite a number of stories about how the cleaning crew quit because they showed up to clean up the stable bar right here, which was the original carriage house. And there was a gentleman sitting at the bar enjoying a refreshing adult beverage.
Mike, did you sneak
me.
around?
Sometimes I can't resist.
And they said, you can't be here, we're gonna call the police. And in moving past him, they could realize they could partially see through him. So they called George, the general manager, and said, you find another crew, we quit. And they left. So George had to find another crew. George tells me that oftentimes when he opens up the place, the wine bottles that are supposed to sit horizontally behind the bar will be taken out and sitting on the floor horizontally.
My kind of ghosts.
I was going to say.
And the staff was wrapping up silverware and napkins, preparing for Sunday brunch. And they were doing that in the Sunday house right here. And they were filling the bins with the silverware. And they thought, okay, one more drink. And then we'll come back and we'll do the rest of the setup for Sunday brunch. And when they came back to the Sunday house, all the chairs that they had been sitting in were now sitting, they were arranged in a circle in the center of the Sunday house. And they were like,
No.
yeah, I think we're done. Okay, we'll just leave. We'll just text someone, hey, you can find the silverware in the Sunday house. Yeah, send. And they locked up the place and called it a night.
That's great. And so over the years, so it's continually been a restaurant or a establishment, something like that. There was never a point where it was like a slaughterhouse or anything like that.
No, it was always a beer garden, restaurant, store, that kind of thing. When I first moved to Austin in 2001, it was a fancy 5-star French restaurant with the waiters wearing the gloves and the crumb catchers and the whole 9 yards like that. And then when the new owners took it over, they decided to make it into a little bit more rustic sort of appeal. And they thought, you know what? Mrs. Hoffheinz ran her mercantile, and people would come to us with stories all the time about buying the penny candy at the mercantile. And you know what? We're gonna create a drink in honor of Mrs. Hoffheinz. We're gonna steep some cherries in brandy, and we're gonna create a dessert. Like, so they on the bar, and this is while they were still like close to opening the new moonshines, and they had the big jar sitting on the bar. And the owner tells me that he was... Train's here!
I was gonna say, that's the ghost train.
The owner tells me that he stood up to say something to the bartender, and he saw the jar of cherries moving down the bar very, very slowly, and he was like, Joel. Joel! And just then the jar went flying, and the brandy and the cherries smashed everywhere, and they said, all right, you know what? We won't have that drink. Okay.
Right, because you would name it after a teetotaler.
Yes.
And
yeah.
she's like, hey, you know,
No,
I'm on my fifth
not
step.
on board with this. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's great.
So, yeah, you guys kick it off here. Where are some other locations that you guys visit in downtown Austin? So people who might be interested in coming to visit. Of course, if you guys come to visit Austin, you have to go on the Austin Ghost Tour. Once you're done with this podcast, I recommend getting on a
Book
plane.
your flight. It's
First
beautiful
things
here, by
first.
the way. It's about, what, 75 degrees?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful, beautiful day.
It's 80 right
It's
now.
80.
barbecue is-
Yay. We reached
surrounding.
the appointed forecast high of 80. That's great.
So we recommend, of course, going to the Austin Ghost Tour. But you know, you're kicking off here. Where are some of your favorite places in Austin to visit?
Oh, Buffalo Billiards, certainly, and you guys have visited there in previous podcasts. Very interesting spot. We generally talk about it from across the street. Pub crawls will actually go inside and upstairs if we can get on up there. The Driscoll Hotel, of course, is the crown jewel of Austin Ghost Tours, and shameless plug for my book, True Haunted Tales of the Driscoll Hotel.
And we'll have a link to that in the show notes as well, so
Awesome.
you can
Thank
pick up
you
a
so
copy.
much.
We're looking forward to reading it, checking it out.
Which
Now,
we're going to do right after this podcast.
okay,
We're
great.
turning everything off. We
It's-
just forget
yeah.
the rest of South by South.
And I'm going to read you the book.
It's a live audible.
Interestingly, though, if you go into the Driscoll and you ask about the ghosts and it's daytime, they will tell you, no, we're not haunted. Because they're owned by the Hyatt chain now. This is their first historic property, and they really don't know what to make of ghosts. So they're kind of like, oh, no, we're not haunted. The night staff is a little bit more tolerant of people asking about their ghosts. But last year, I actually ran into someone on the light rail going home, and he kind of chuckled when he saw my name badge, and he said, hey, just how haunted is the Driscoll Hotel? And I reached out and got my book out, and I said, haunted enough for me to write a whole book about the place? Why do you ask? And he said, well, I'm a roofer, and I got called in to place a bid on some roofing work they needed done. And they said the most curious thing while we were talking. They said, just so you know, if you take the gig, stuff might happen. And I said, oh, please tell me they expounded on stuff.
Right.
And they said, yeah, your tools might move around or disappear. You might see children in period clothing. There might be a gentleman smoking a cigar. You might smell cigar smoke. You might smell roses. You know, stuff.
Oh man.
So yeah, I gave him a book and my card, and I said, sir, if you take the gig and stuff happens, you're going to call me, right?
Addendum to the book coming soon.
Exactly.
Second edition.
Volume 2, yeah. Where else? Oh, the Texas State Capitol, various government buildings. On 10th Street, there is the site of Austin's first surgical suite, which usually gives us some interesting evidence, even standing outside. Now, a lot of people are disappointed. It was like, oh, are we going in? Are we going in? And unfortunately, if we have a crowd of more than 10, we can't even get into the Driscoll anymore.
Sure.
Because of the Hyatt's concierge policies and stuff like that.
Sure.
But even standing outside, we have found that just telling the stories about these places has them skirting around. They come around. It's like the cocktail party effect on the other side. Haven't you found that to be true?
Well, I work on the Madison Ghost Tour, and I haven't been a tour guide in a while, so I mostly just do the writing and stuff now. But I have not had any experience on a ghost tour yet, at least one that I was running. So that's why when I see people have experience now, Wendy in Waukesha, did the ghost ever come up and like grab your skirt or something?
Well, no, not a ghost specifically, but several of the times while we were walking down the street, we'd have the effect where the street lights
would shut off
right as we're walking past, and it was usually there's a UFO story that I tell, and so oftentimes it would be around when I was telling that story. So a lot of times the people in the group would notice it. It's like, okay,
That's pretty cool.
Now, here's an
I
interesting.
didn't even know about that.
Here's an interesting experience I've done with the shack hack before. Is that
Wait, what's the shack hack? Is
a
that
shack
like a
hack
really tall basketball
is a-
player shows up and like?
Shack hack is a Radio Shack. It's like a ghost box. It's a
right.
Radio
Okay.
Shack radio where the scan and seek button has been disabled, and spirits can utilize the white noise in order to answer questions directly.
The SB7, yes.
The SB7. So what I've done occasionally, and it's been really interesting doing this, is that I will ask, name someone on my tour tomorrow night, or later on tonight, or something like that, and a name will pop out. And a lot of times when people make a reservation, it's they'll make it for 4 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'll scan the list and I'm like, no, there's not a Jose on the list, or something like. So I'll go, okay, well I'll bring it up, and then I'll start the tour and I'll say, just so you know, I asked who's going to be on the tour. Tell me something about someone on the tour, and this is the response I got, and. Like I've done this 4 times, and all 4 times there's been someone on the tour
Ooh, I
love it.
That's a good one.
where,
I was gonna say
where it was
that's
kind of like, I'm Jose. He was
Right.
kind of like, it's like, actually my name is Joe, but everybody calls me Jose. I said, well, they know that.
Right, they
know about that.
asked for you by name,
Yeah,
Jose, so be on your best behavior because they know
right,
you.
Right out of the gate, it's kind of like there's this essence of believability. It's like,
Yeah.
I had no way of knowing you were on the tour tonight, or that your friends called you Jose, right?
But my ghostly friends knew.
Yeah, no,
Exactly.
I love that too, and that's a fun way. And that's one of the, it sounds like, Austin we know is a fun city, and we love it. But it sounds like the tour also is unique in its own right. You guys are doing fun things like asking for names in the beginning
Yeah.
and little tricks to make it extra fun. Now, you came to Austin, and so you were born here. You weren't here by.
No, I got here as soon as I could.
You weren't a victim of circumstance. But you got. So, what's one of the things that you think makes this city unique, especially when it comes to paranormal stuff?
It is the vibrancy of the city. It's the energy of the city. And so many people say, "Well, I'm going to go look for ghosts in a graveyard." And I'll say, good luck with that. All you're really going to probably find are unhappy ghosts.
Because they're stuck. It's like
Right,
it's like running
yeah.
into a ghost at work or whatever.
Mopping the floor.
Yeah, so I did not sign up for this. But we have found that there's so much underground water and ley lines coming into the city, and it's the movement of that water combined with the energy of the city and the building materials. This is limestone.
Oh, there we go.
Limestone, granite, iron pillars in buildings. All of that creates a battery effect, and it just charges
Certainly.
and charges and charges, and creates what is called the stone tape theory.
Oh, and that's actually one of our favorite things to talk about. The idea that the recording,
Yes.
that somehow that stone, especially particularly limestone,
Mm-hmm.
can record,
Absorbing energy and like memories and activities.
Yes.
like grooves in a record, and then sometimes under the right conditions, the record will play itself.
Yes. Yeah, there's a whole 900 block of Congress Avenue, which was built by Abner Cook, and he had a brick making factory along Shoal Creek, and all of the Shoal Creek experienced a great many tragedies.
Right, yeah, we went there last year. Shoal Creek, yeah,
Comanche
Shoal Creek.
attacks, and Union soldiers who died of yellow fever, and men who killed one another over supposed stash of treasure.
I think Scott said he had an experience at Shoal Creek last year.
Yeah, he had an EVP.
Oh, really?
A little, I forgot what it said, but yeah, he just picked up something when he was walking around in the creek bed. And
Yeah.
had something
Yeah.
interesting appear.
He said, "Get out."
Of course it did. So Abner Cook had a brick making factory along Shoal Creek, and it's believed that the mud from the bricks that was used in the buildings along that 900 block still contains some of the juju from Shoal Creek. So those buildings may not have had anything traumatic or dramatic happen in them, but it's the very nature of the building materials that still contains the energy.
I like that theory.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And so Austin, a unique city, sounds like a really unique ghost tour. What are some places in town that maybe you've heard stories about and haven't had a chance to investigate, but you just know there's something there and you're dying? You're like, we're going to find something
The
here.
next one.
You know?
There is an address along Congress Avenue, 920, Suite 100. I ran into a couple of business guys like 9 years ago who had just opened up a business called Belvedere's Men's Spa, and they did a beautiful renovation on the building. It was gorgeous. And I said, but I got to ask you, while you were working on it, did anything unusual happen? Because, and they said, who are you? I said, I'm Monica, I'm from Austin
Why do you
Ghost Tours.
ask?
And they were like, oh, hot diggity, the ghost tours, ooh. So I said, so did anything unusual happen? They said, no. No, oh gosh darn it, no. And about 10 minutes we started talking about other places around Texas and other family members. And then we circled back around to, but here, no. Oh, except the light bulbs. I said, well, what's unusual with the light bulbs? And they said, seems like we have to change them a lot, like every other day. And I said,
adds up.
that didn't strike you as unusual because plumbing and electricity are two of the easiest things for spirits to mess with. And they said, oh, plumbing too? Could that be why the toilets flush by themselves?
What? I love it. The fact that, every other day I think about that. Thinking if you're buying one of those like LED bulbs, whatever, they're supposed to last for 12 years, and you got to change them every day, you're out of business.
Yeah, exactly. So they lasted in that location maybe 17 months. That was 7 years ago. No one's moved into that building since.
Oh, man.
When an address stays empty far too long, I start becoming very suspicious about it. Yeah. Place across from...
Looks like that's where we're spending tonight.
Place right across from the Millet Opera House, now known as the Austin Club. That is a building that... It's an office building. And there used to be a Victorian house that stood there where a man killed his wife and his 2 children. Strangled them, chopped them up, and hid their bodies in the cistern. And that building has not been occupied in about 19 years.
So did this happen a long time ago?
It happened in 1895.
1895,
Yes,
okay.
yeah, 1895. So sort of the golden age of Austin.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think some people would argue
The
that
gilded,
now
the gilded golden age of Austin. We're known for the servant girl murders.
that sounds unpleasant.
Austin's first, America's first serial killer, who between December of 1884 and mostly all of 1885, killed 9 people. He's known as the servant girl annihilator. He was never brought to justice. There was really never anyone who was arrested for these crimes. We don't even know if it was one person or whether it was, he did 6 murders, but then the last 2 or 3 were someone else, were copycats, that sort of thing. Oddly enough, no hauntings connected with this serial killing.
And especially at a time in history when everything has a haunted, associated. Like if you look at a newspaper from like the 19th century, like every time it's like, oh yeah, it's the ghost that was there. The people saw a weird blue light. It's just the phantom that lives there. Sometimes he eats a dog. And you're like, can we have some elaboration? I wish you could talk to the journalist and be like, fake news.
But for the servant girl thing, so it was just, were they servants of just
They were,
all around the city, or that would just...
Yeah, there were cooks and in one case it was an 11-year-old girl of one of the cooks, and she, poor girl, was lobotomized through her ear and through the temple, and lived like that for 2 hours.
Oh my gosh!
Until her mother could be revived and told of her daughter's condition. And she had to give the permission for the pins to be released so her brain could bleed out and she could pass peacefully. And up until Mary Ramey's death, the 11-year-old.
So is Rainey the family, the street's named after?
No, Ramey.
Ramey.
With an M.
Okay,
Ramey.
like Sam Raimi.
Yes. But up until her death, really the population said, oh, no, this is happening to the serving class and mixed breed and African Americans, so we don't care. And so not very much effort was put into finding the perpetrator. It's kind of like, you know what? Someone got drunk, came into town, did this deed at random, and left.
Those
And
lives aren't as valuable as the higher up people, so
exactly.
we don't need to worry
Yes.
about it.
But then Mary's death, and that turned the tide of sentiment. And they were like, yeah, okay, it's serving class, it's people of color, but this was an 11-year-old girl. This has got to stop. And about 800 arrests were made in connection with these crimes, and nobody was ever brought to justice. Now, we think they finally got the guy the following February in 1886, because a man got in a brawl in a bar in East Austin, and he committed the one sin you should not commit.
He spilled a beer?
He brought a knife to a gunfight.
Oops.
Yeah. He started beating up on a girl. He was told to cut it out. He dragged the girl outside, started beating her up some more. Other guys came out, said, cut it out. I mean it. He drew a knife. They drew a gun. Bam. And Nathan Elgin was dead. And when they did the autopsy, they found on his left foot he had 6 toes. And one detail that the police never, yeah, that's right.
What do they call it? Polydactyly, right? Is it?
Yeah.
Did he murder Inigo Montoya?
But one detail that the police never released to the newspapers or anywhere was that in the many footprints that they found at the crime scene, one foot appeared to have 6 toes.
What a clue.
Yeah.
Like, that makes it so easy to find. I mean,
Yeah.
to
So
identify.
it took a UT professor like so many years of going through police reports and details to find this major clue and finally solve one of the great unsolved mysteries of all times.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. And first of all, the fact that's like the thing is though, if you know that the killer's got 6 toes, right? You don't want to just shoot that information out there because everybody with 6 toes is going to get killed.
Yeah, I know.
Everybody with 5 toes is like, yeah, I can kill now.
Score.
I gotta go
can
kill
totally kill my wife now
I've been thinking about it for
because
a
they're
while.
looking for a guy with 6 toes. Yeah.
Oh, and that's just an interesting thing too, because it's I guess I always have that sense of people with extra digits are. It's because of that TV show or whatever, like, and there was an Outer Limits episode where if they had a 6th finger,
yes.
like that's how you could tell that they were the aliens, and it was the 6th finger. And so I'm like that guy's already weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Outcast.
Right. So oh man. But no hauntings associated particularly with the servant girl.
No. The only weird story that I've ever heard was someone who lived at one of the killing sites. There are lofts there now, and she said, let me ask you, I live like on the 8th floor, and sometimes when I get out of my shower, my music box is playing. And I said, interesting.
Yeah.
That's Mary Ramey's murder site, the 11-year-old girl.
Wow.
And I said, think about what's happening scientifically when you're in the shower. Your brain waves go down to that alpha state, right? You go from this massive beta input level here, and you're at that relaxed daydreaming state.
Yeah, right.
You have the positive, or is it negative ions? I always mix those up.
My ions are usually negative. Especially
okay.
if I got to ride in the van for several hours at a time.
So you have the bouncing of the water particles creating that negative ion charge. And so, collectively those things, with it being one of the killing sites, it's kind of like, I can't definitively say that that's what's going on here, but I think it's interesting that you're having this activity. And she said, on the 8th floor? And I said,
right, they can, like, it's not like they can't take the stairs. I mean, they're coming from a lot farther than just even
the modern Omni Hotel on floors 5 and 7 has activity there where an old school used to be.
And what's really interesting when you just talked about the different states of mind is that we just went into that in a podcast about music. And about how ritual dancing and people would get into these ceremonies and these rituals and they dance or piercings and things like that, and they would get in, their brainwaves would go into a different state, and that's when a paranormal experience would happen.
This happens quite often. People at the Driscoll Hotel tell us their experience happened when they were just going to bed, or when they had just gotten out of the shower, or when they're doing some sort of mindless task as far as the staff is concerned. At my church, we have a haunting up there in the choir loft, and she only comes around when we're singing something very difficult and singing it very well. And so I always like to bring this up and say, think of what's going on scientifically. Okay, come with me now to think through this. Our brain waves up there in the choir loft are at a very focused performance state. The congregation is at a very worshipful state. You add the stained glass window lighting and the smell of the incense and all of those things that add to the reverence of the service. And that's when her energy pulls out. I can feel it about 4 feet away from me, but we have someone in our soprano section who can actually see her, and says she's a Victorian woman dressed in a green velvet gown, and she loves coming by and stopping by and listening to our music. And then when we disengage, she kind of floats back to whatever dimension she was at before.
She's piggybacking on that energy that you're creating with the whole.
Or she's just a picky ghost. You know, she's like, when we do the easy stuff, no, but do the hard, do the hard stuff, and I'll come by.
She likes the hard stuff. She likes the flowery stuff, and she I have to say she's a bit of a snob. If we start, doing stuff surrounding Day of the Dead, the Day of the Dead altar and things like that, she got very upset with that. If the congregation is talkative downstairs, her energy feels pointy at that point.
Now, is there a name or anything associated with that, or do people know that's like, oh, that's old Mrs. Crabgrass, and she loved the choir?
We can't find a name. She's not willing to share it with us, so we just call her our Lady of the Choir Loft.
Yeah, that's
she's a lovely spirit.
Cool.
We don't want her to go away.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of lovely spirits, maybe we should walk around a little bit and see if we can find some of our own here at the Moonshine today.
All right, sounds great.
We should. And Monica, thank you so much for sharing all your great stories with us. And I can't wait to go on your tour and hear the full story and hear about that bride at the Driscoll and all the drama.
Brides.
But the
plural.
specific one that you learned about, I'm like dying to know what was the drama. So
Let's go meet Tara.
Yeah, this is exciting. So, and thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
It was my pleasure, and thanks.
And you guys will be able to find the link to all that stuff at othersidepodcast.com/239. You find the link to Austin Ghost Tours, the link to Monica's book, and some fun photos so you can see what some of these places look like. So we came out of the Moonshine Bar, and now we are standing just a little down the 3rd Street from the corner of 3rd and Red River. So we can see the wedding house that the Hofstetters?
The Hofheinz.
The Hofheinz family built for the children. He built for his daughter on the occasion of a wedding. And so we were standing out there, and also 606 3rd Street and 608 3rd Street. And so these are like pretty old buildings in the middle of the city.
Yeah, the 606 is a dark green 2-story house where you can see windows in the top, and it's got like 2 doors, and just it kind of looks like a little, you said it was a store, right?
Yes, it served as a store. Yeah, it was originally probably servants' quarters.
Kind of has that look of a little marketplace kind of thing. Yeah. And then 608 is just a very simple square, 1-story, red door, blue building, nice little porch.
It looks like it was moved from a ghost town or something like that. So we're looking at 608 Eastern. It looks like it was moved from a ghost town to this ultra modern downtown Austin. And so these buildings are almost outliers when they're surrounded by like the Fairmont Hotels across the street. It's this beautiful all glass outside building that looks like it's from 2050. Like the JW Marriott looks like it's from the future, and the convention center. So everything around here looks ultra modern. And then you have these old houses popped right in the middle. And this is where they've gotten some cool evidence on the Austin Ghost Tour. So we want to talk to you a little bit to see how she does investigations and get an example so that you guys know maybe how you can do an investigation and get some of the awesome evidence like Monica does.
So, they show you on cable TV that you need total darkness, that you got to wait till 3 a.m. dead time, or you need to have a lockdown and crap like that. And I always tell people, no, you don't need to do any of that. Some of the most compelling evidence that I've gotten has been recorded on a Sunday afternoon parked in front of a building that I'd been in before. So it's sort of like you go into the building and you introduce yourself, you establish a relationship there, and then you can come back at any time. And just so long as you identify yourself, hey, remember me? I came and talked to you before.
And when you go to the building, it's not like you have to go in the middle of the night or sneak. It's got to be a full moon or something like
no,
that.
you don't
And
even
have
need to go
wearing,
inside.
like a white robe.
Yeah, right, exactly. There needs to be no blood sacrifice ahead of time or
Like
any
that can add a little bit.
sprinkling of blood. Yeah,
for fun.
Nothing like that on the doorpost. Nothing like that. I know, for instance, there was a building along 7th and Congress where we were asked to investigate. We got some really compelling evidence, and I felt like the spirits there were old but new to communicating. So I came back about 2 weeks later on a Sunday and revved up the shack hack that we discussed before, started a recording on my iPhone, and I readily admit the game I played with them I stole from Ghost Hunters. It's the 1, 2, 3 game. I say 1 and 2, I expect them to say 3. And I added 2.5, lost a little faith, but they very loudly said 3. And I was so astonished, I said, that was amazing. And a female voice comes back at the end and says, yes. It's like, so very nonchalantly.
Agreed.
So the next Saturday, I decided to try the same game right here along 3rd Street, where we had been chatting with the ghost for quite some time. They played the game in exactly the same way. I explained it to them. I said, you want to play? They tell me, start. I say 1 and 2. They say 3. And when I tell them that was amazing, they stop the radio from scanning on a sports station with a cheering crowd and an excited announcer. Then they start the radio again, and a female voice comes back at the end and says, yes.
Wow.
Just to close the same damn conversation in 2 different parts of town. And sometimes when you go out looking for answers, all you come back with are just more questions.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's extraordinary. So there was one location where we investigated where we couldn't turn out the lights. It was a restaurant, and the fluorescent lights stayed on the whole time. We got every sort of evidence possible: audio, phantom aromas, people getting
On
scratched.
our investigations, the phantom aroma is usually me.
I wouldn't describe it as an aroma. Maybe more of a
A pungent.
Did a demon just crap his pants around here?
So yeah, how we do things a little differently. We like to dispel a lot of the hyped drama that they show on the cable shows. That you just don't need it in order to have stuff happen. That they're there in another dimension, ready to interact, provided that you're respectful and that you don't treat them like some sort of dog and pony show.
So let's take, for example, so we have some equipment here.
Yes.
And so how do you go around when you do investigations? What would be an example? So the equipment we have here, I've got the ghost meter,
Yes.
capital T.
the actual ghost meter,
Yeah.
and then there's also a K2
K2
EMF meter.
Yes, and they're interacting with one
Right,
another.
They're looking at each other. They're like, hey, how you doing, buddy?
Hey.
Okay. And then we got a spirit box, which is like the shack hack she was talking about. And then if we feel any cold spots, we can see if there's an actual cold spot change. So usually when you do an interaction with or do an investigation, how do you do it?
What we'll usually do is do a bunch of research before we get to the site. We will get to the site and tell what we know. So we just sort of sit in the space and we speak aloud what it is that we know about the building and the people who lived in the building and perhaps died in the building. We make no conjecture as to who's there or why they're there or anything like that. We'll do a walk around the property and just get a general feel, do some base readings for the K2 meters, and if we get anything anomalous, we'll see, okay, well, is that near a fuse box or something like that? We'll try to immediately dispel things that are not of the paranormal ilk. And then we'll choose a room and we'll just sort of tell the stories again, and mainly, rather than talking to them directly, we'll wait and see if they interact with us, either through lights on the meters or through any sort of actual audio that we're hearing, or things getting moved around or knocking or anything like that. So we'll do those sorts of things first, and then we'll go into a shack hack session, try that, and then a silent EVP session. So we'll ask the same questions numerous ways, depending upon how they want to interact with us.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, and we're willing to do this any time of day. The reason that I think most people like to do these investigations at night, maybe not in the middle of the night,
Right.
because we got day jobs and that kind of thing, but certainly at night, is not so much because there's more activity from them, but there's less interference from the outside world.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So there's no train sounds. There's no like
There's
bar sounds.
fewer.
Yeah, this is not.
Okay.
So
There's no
the-
train sounds.
right.
There's no bar sounds. Things like that. It's just easier because night is quiet.
And there's not as much beta brainwave action going
Well,
on.
I mean,
as
we've been to South by Southwest a lot of times, and I wouldn't say there's a lot of brainwave action anyway.
Probably not. But you get the drift of late at night there is less activity, the world is quieter, and it heightens our senses more than it helps them on the other side. There's just not as much interference, and they have a cleaner frequency in order to come through.
Sure. So, for example, we're on 3rd Street here. Now in front of the blockchain house, and I don't know if blockchain means haunted.
Haunted cryptocurrency.
Like the price of your cryptocurrency might be haunted, depending on when you bought it. But so like down this street. So would you tell a story in front of the wedding house, and then?
No, because that guy's crazy, and sometimes the living scare me more than,
Oh,
than
yeah.
the
Oh,
other
yeah,
side.
more
But
dangerous.
certainly this house and this house. What we have found at Austin Ghost Tours is that many times when a building returns to something that it once was before, a store, a bank, that sort of thing, that very often paranormal activity in that building will spike. So we knew companies that had been in this little duplex house here for many years. PR firms, accounting firms, nothing ever happened. A store moves in, bam, they get full-bodied apparitions of people walking in the door and walking around the place. And we're kind of like, whoa, what the hell is going on there? And then we go and do a little bit of research, and sure enough, we find that in the 1960s, it was the same kind of store. A bunch of artists who got together and said, let's rent the downstairs of this house, and upstairs lived two brothers, and one of the brothers, Curly, naturally,
Yuck, yuck.
was bipolar. He became depressed one night and hanged himself in the upstairs room there. And as soon as Cypress Vanguard store moved in, he resonated with that energy and started walking around the store again. This place right here, numerous businesses operated there as well. Originally, this building was in front of the Capitol, and it was where they kept the plans and the payroll for when they built the Texas State Capitol. And then when the Capitol was completed, they put it on a railway car, moved it to this side of town. Recently,
So it was like the world's first mobile home.
recently, they had some activity in there again. It was because it was where they were keeping the plans and payroll for the Fairmont Hotel building project, just across the street over there.
So because it was similar, because it was used in similar like architectural plans and things like that,
Yes.
the ghosts seemed to be like, hey, I know about that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I remember this. I remember when we were doing this before, and so they resonate with it, and they bump around, and they just create more activity. And we have found that in numerous places in downtown Austin, and that's sort of like one of the first clues. It's like, oh, you got haunted activity, and you never really had it before. What kind of business are you in? Okay, now we know what to look for, and we know, was it ever that before? And 9 times out of 10, it's exactly what we find.
Well, okay, so now we're talking about the ghost stories and the weird things that happened here. What would be the next thing you would do then on an investigation? Would you be like, okay, so we'll grab out our ghost meters and say like, hey, what's up? You know.
Yeah, we'll set a K2 meter at opposite ends of the room or something like that, and say, you know, hey, there's a device here, and if you get close to it, you might be able to light it up, that sort of thing. We've never had much luck with the flashlight thing that some people do.
Right. Okay, so the flashlight thing is where they turn they take a mag flashlight,
right,
where you twist the bulb on the mag flashlight to try to like make it almost on, and so you keep it in that state between almost on and almost off, and then you ask a question, and maybe the flashlight turns on for yes, or blink twice for yes.
Yeah, and I've always had tremendous success with just silent EVP sessions, of going back through audio, particularly when we're just talking amongst ourselves and that sort of thing.
We might have some here.
Yes,
that's right. That's
exactly. Yeah. Certainly, some of the stuff that I sent you regarding the antique store in Buda, and also at the Paramount Theater. That was kind of a weird experience where I found that they were giving a tour on a Saturday morning. And I got some other people from the ghost tours and said, let's take a tour of the Paramount. There was no tour. I saw it on the website, and by the time we got there and we encountered the building manager, I said, what time's your 10 o'clock tour, really? Because, it's like 10:30 and we've been waiting out in the hot sun. And he goes, we don't give tours. I said, it's on your website. He called up the website and it was gone. And he said, you know what? You've been standing out there for a while. Let me give you a tour. Gave us a private tour, and I got all kinds of audio evidence. We were invited into that building.
Summoned there.
We got summoned there big time. And I played this evidence for the building manager, and he was like, oh my God, it's not like one of those shows where they have to put the caption underneath. You can understand everything. And it was all good, and it was all positive. Every conversation that we had, was, oh, that guy's a gentleman, and
not things like movies nowadays suck.
Right, no, and ghosts apologizing for scaring people, and or startling people and that sort of thing. And I said, this is all good. This is all we were invited there so that we could share this evidence with you and let you know that anything that's here loves being here. And there's just it's so gratifying to be in this kind of business where you can tell people the real story about what hauntings are and what they aren't.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And so you start with the K2, and then you might move on to the shack hack. Kind of thing.
Yeah, we just kind of shake it up. It's kind of like, well, they hate the AM band. Let's try FM. Well, they really hate the FM band. You know what? I think they just hate the shack hack. A lot of times older spirits don't like that noise, that interference, so we just stick to the silent EVP stuff, and they seem satisfied with that. And sometimes it takes several trips back to a location for them to get comfortable with you saying, okay, well, I'm going to open up to you now because you want to tell our story. And that's what we'll communicate to them, is we're here to find out the truth. We want to tell your real truth. So if you have a story to tell, let us know you're here, and let us know you mean no one any harm, or that you want something done, or just give us your side.
That's awesome. Well, that's perfect. So, where can people find you, and direct links to taking a tour with you?
And reading your book.
So AustinGhostTours.com is Austin Ghost Tours website, and you can find my book, True Haunted Tales of the Driscoll Hotel, on Amazon.com, or right after my tour, I'll be glad to sign you a copy and send you on your way. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Perfect. That sounds great.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming.
We really had a great time talking with Monica while we were in Austin, and I also enjoyed reading her book, True Haunted Tales of the Driscoll Hotel, during our extensive 20-plus hour drive from Austin back to Madison, Wisconsin. One of the stories in the book is about a musician who stayed at the Driscoll Hotel. The singer for Concrete Blonde, Jeanette Napolitano, apparently had her own ghostly experience while she was there. And it wasn't just any ghost, it was a flirty ghost. So that encounter inspired the song Ghost of a Texas Ladies Man. Since we're touring musicians ourselves and have spent plenty of time in old, possibly haunted hotels, we couldn't resist the opportunity to do our own version of the song. So the song for this week is Sunspot's take on the Concrete Blonde song, Ghost of a Texas Ladies Man. And you'll be able to find that in the show notes page at othersidepodcast.com/239.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at othersidepodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
I'd like to extend a huge thanks to our Patreon community who makes it possible for us to continue putting out new episodes, interviewing people, visiting haunted locations, writing and recording new songs, and learning more about paranormal topics. Thank you so much for your support and for all of your ideas that you chip in and the fun stories that you share with us during our hangouts. You're wonderful. If you'd like to join that community, you can do that at othersidepodcast.com/donate for as little as you want. It's your choice. Any little bit helps, and we'd love to have you as part of the community. And an extra special shout out to Dr. Ned, who is one of our Patreon members, supporting at a level where he gets this special shout out every episode. And we truly do appreciate it, Ned. Have a great week, everybody. And we'll be back with more weirdness next week.
Da-da-da-da-da.
Boom! Jazz hands.
That was good.
Like,